So good morning to everyone. We are going to start with our fourth unit today. Okay, so it is also consisting of 5 chapters, and all the 5 chapters are very easy. As I told you previously also, your unit 4 and unit 5 is the most scoring units because you have very much straightforward question which has been expected from these 2 units. Okay, so if you can see logically, these 2 units is carrying, you can say, I think 15 marks. Each unit is for 15 marks. So 30 marks you are going to have in your hand, and it's very easy really. Okay, if there are some questions which has been expected, and it is going to come definitely. There are very less questions you can create out of these 2 units. So whichever questions I have given, like I'm going to give you in the notes, please prepare that properly, and whatever we are learning, please listen to it properly. And as I told you, in the coming week, in the last day of this week, that is your Saturday, is going to have a test on unit 2. So in very prior notice, I am telling you that we are going to have a test on a second unit on Saturday. Okay, so start preparing. All the notes, videos and ppts are present with you. You can go with it, and if you have any doubt, you can ask me at any point of time. Fine. So now we are going to start with our fourth unit, that is your chapter 1, Enterprise Java Beans. Let's start with the introduction first. When we learn about the, or when we learn the first previous, you can say the very starting chapters, there I have told you that what all are the web application technologies we have, and what all enterprise application technologies we have, which we can use while developing our web application. Okay. So there the servlets and the JSPs are all considered as what your web application technologies. And if I want to develop more complex than the normal one, or if I just wanted to have the application with lots of features like scalability, extendability, and all those things, so you can go ahead with your enterprise technologies, which will help you to develop an enterprise application. Okay. One of the technology which is going to help you to develop an enterprise application is something called as Enterprise Java Beans, or you can say EJB. Okay. Now I hope you know what you mean by Java Bean, because enough we have learned about this term in our third unit, even in your previous unit, whatever we have learned. Okay, so specifically in third unit, I told you what you mean by Java Bean. It is the place where actually your Java code is going to get executed. Okay, whenever you're going to create an application in your platform called as NetBeans, I have shown you that how to create an application. Okay, in one of the chapter I have shown you with a screenshot that how to create an application. And once you have created an application, how to add the servlet file into your application, how you can add an HTML file, how you can add a JSP file, even you can add an EJB file. Okay, so if you want to deal with the enterprise Java Bean, or you can say EJB, you can easily create the EJB file in your application. Okay, why we need to have a separate EJB file, why we cannot go with the same servlet file, why we cannot do the coding of EJB into the servlet file? There are a lot of features are being included, and making the developers life easy when we are going with the EJB. So number of features we are going to learn, even the benefits we are going to learn in the coming slides, that what is the useful, what is the use and what is the advantage of using this EJB. You will be understanding more that why we need to apply this, okay, while developing an application or web application. Now EJB is also considered as what, a reusable server side software component. Okay, it is a reusable server side software component. That means whatever things you are going to create, or whatever page you are going to develop, okay, whatever module or a component you are going to develop for your software or for your application, it is going to be first of all for server side, and once you have created, you can reuse it also. It is going to be reusable. Enterprise Java Bean facilitates the development of the distributed Java application. So that means whatever application you are going to create using EJB, it is also going to help you to make that application distributed. That means that application is going to be accessed from any part of the world. Okay, it is going to provide you an object oriented environment It is going to help you to build a distributed component or a module. It is going to work with the multi-tier architecture also. Fine. So there are few advantages we have because of which we are being able to use this EJB. The primary advantage, or you can say the primary goal for the EJB, is that it is going to have run write once, run anywhere. So that is, you can say, the platform independent. Okay, whichever concept you talk about the Java, it is going to have the platform independence as a feature. It will going to help you to reuse the things, reuse the components which you are going to develop for your application, for your software. It is also helps you to develop the distributed Java applications. Whatever applications you are going to create using Java, it is going to help you to do, it will help you to develop in a distributed way, because the application can be able to access from anywhere. Okay, then it is also going to work in an object oriented environment. So but obviously if I'm making use of Java to work or to create EJB, so it is obviously going to be in the object oriented environment, because the language itself is an object oriented. Okay, then we can have the multi-tier enterprise architecture, or you can say entire architecture. Now, what is the biggest advantage you are going to have when you're going to use the EJB? It is going to make the developer who is developing the application, okay, and the developer needs to concentrate only to the programming, only to the business logic which the developer is going to develop it. Okay, so in an application, if I'm saying there is a developer who needs to develop even the client end, who needs to develop even the logic, the business logic, or you can say for the server side. Okay, even the developer has to take care about the database. Fine. Here in EJB, it is only the logic which needs to be written, which is going to interact with the client and the database. So the rest part, it is not been developed by the EJB developer. It is only the programming which is going to be written for the server. Okay, only the logic which has been written for the server. Okay, so while removing the need to write all those plumbing code, so whatever code we design for the client, and maybe in the HTML or in the JSP, or whatever we are doing it with the database, so that is something being considered as a plumbing code when we talk about the EJB. Okay, you can make your developer not to write the code for handling the transactional between your database and the server. You don't need to make your developer write the code for the security, for the connections, for the networking, for threading. So all this is going to be removed when you're going to make use of EJB. Okay, it's just a logic. Fine. Now, when we can use the enterprise Java Bean, when we need an application which will be, working with, or which is going to work with a remote access, that means it is, in simple terms, if you need an application which needs to be distributed. Okay, so that time you can make use of enterprise Java Bean. Whenever you're going to make your application and you expect that application needs to be scalable, that means it should be able to add features in future. It should support the load balancing. If at all any n number of loads are going to happen over the server, it should be able to handle it. There should be some failover, or you can say the clustering. Failover means if at all any kind of failure occurs, how much easily and how with the minimum time you're going to overcome with the failure. So that is something called as failover. You can also call it as high availability. Okay, so your application, whenever you wants to have an application which is going to be scalable, which is going to support the load balancing, which is going to have the clustering, which is going to have failover, you can make use of enterprise Java Bean. Okay, whenever you try to have the encapsulation of the business logic, where you expect that your EJB application is going to have a separate presentation layer and separate persistent layer, or you can say the business layer, that time you can use the EJB. Okay, now here, just one thing you have to understand, that the client, or the, you can say, the Java Bean component. Okay, so Java Bean module or a Java Bean component, whichever you are going to develop, or a server side program which you are going to develop, as well as the Bean client, that means the client code which you are going to write, it should be written in Java. Okay, I'll repeat it. For the client and for the server, whichever language, like whichever code you are going to do it, whenever you're talking about that I want to develop an application using EJB, okay, so the client code and the server code, okay, you are going to have written in Java. And if at all you want to develop the client language, or if you want to have a client language which can be written in some other language like your .NET, in your PHP, in your JSP, in your HTML, you should go with the web services. You need a web services which is going to help you to communicate with your Java bean component which you can write for your server. And if you want to use some other language for your bean client, then you can go with the web services. So that means to understand the other language, okay, if your enterprise Java bean wants to understand the client which is written in some other language, so you have to make use of something called as web services. Two of the web services has been written over here, that is one is SOAP and one is REST. We'll go in detail about these web services, what all these web services and what is web services. Just remember right now that we are going to make use of web services like your SOAP and REST. It is going to be placed in between, which is going to have that conversion of the language. Okay. Then your client is able to communicate with the server, that is your Java Bean component, and your Java Bean component, which is written in Java, will be able to communicate with the client. Fine. Now, we'll see what web service is first of all. So the web service is going to be defined by the following ways. Okay, it is also considered as what a client server application, the application which has been developed in between the client and the server, who is responsible to build the communication. Okay, web service is also called it as a method of communication between the two devices over the network. Okay, so over the network remotely, if you want to communicate with some other device, and maybe one device has been written, or one device is having an application which is written in completely in EJB, and the other device at the other end is written into some other language. So to have that communication possible, we are going to have a web service in between. It is also a software system for the interoperable machine to machine communication. Okay, that is, as we know that the EJB is something called as write once run anywhere, that is WORA. So it is a software system. The web service is a software system which is going to work in interoperably. Okay, or you can say it is having a feature called as interoperability. So web service which we are going to use, it is not going to affect with the platforms, it is not going to affect with the language. Okay, so even if you use a Java, even if you use any other native languages like C++, or you can say the JSP or the HTML or any other thing, okay, PHP, it is not going to affect with the platforms, it is not going to affect with the language. Fine. It is also said that it is a collection of standards and the protocols which is responsible for exchanging the information between the two devices and the application. So I hope you have understood that what you mean by web services. Okay, it's a system which is present between your client and the server. That's why it is said that it is a client server application, and it is going to make possible the communication between the two machines, two devices over the network. And it is very much having a feature called as interoperability. That means this system is not going to have any effect, you know, of the language, the different languages, if the machines are using it. And it is a collection of very much, very good of standards and the protocols which will help the system to exchange the information. Now, if you can see in this diagram, we have number of languages available at both the end, and we have a web services in between. Okay, so the web service is going to make the Java to communicate to PHP. Even the .NET is able to communicate to the Java, and the PHP is able to communicate to the .NET. It is possible when we are going to make use of web services. Fine. So whenever we are going to develop an application and we'll try to implement the EJB in our application, so in that only one problem which we are going to face is that it is not going to interact with the client which is written in some other language. So the web service is itself designed in such a way that it is a language independent, and it is designed, its architecture, its structure is in such a way that it is going to build a communication between two parties, two devices. Okay, now why we need a web services? Because it is having an interoperability which is the highest priority of the application or a system. Okay, that is, it is going to have the simple applications that is going to run on the web, and it is going to use any type of browser on any platform. That's why they said it is interoperable. Web services are going to take the web applications to the next level, because the disadvantage what can be occur between the two devices, maybe they are using the different languages, it is going to remove that, and it is going to take the web application to the next level. Then the web services has the two types of uses. Then it is, first one is reusable, as I told you in the very first slide, that it is something called as reusable. It is having a feature called as reusability, reusing of the components which we are going to develop using the EJB, and it is going to connect with the existing software. Now, we'll see the difference between the two web services, which I told you that we have two web services. Okay, so in market we have number of web services available. It is completely dependent on you which web services you're going to make use in between your client and the server whenever you're going to have a communication. Okay, so two possibilities we have, two options we have, that is one is SOAP and one is REST. So we'll see one by one the difference. So it is very important difference also, students, please mark. So we'll start with the first point, that SOAP is stands for the Simple Object Access Protocol. Okay, what do you mean by SOAP? What does it stands for? The Simple Object Access Protocol, and your REST is stands for Representational State Transfer. Okay, REST stands for what? Representational State Transfer. I hope you will remember this. SOAP is considered, or SOAP basically it is a protocol. It is like something, you can say the set of rules has been defined to this specific web services, which is been followed by both your client as well as the server while having the communication. Okay, REST is not a protocol, but it is an architecture which your server, or like in between your server and client, we can develop. Fine. So it is like a prototype, it is like an architecture which we can design in between the client and the server to have the communication possible. Now, SOAP is not going to use the REST, that is the REST web service, which is it is in the form of architecture, like it is responsible for the architectural style, because it is a protocol. But REST is going to use what? SOAP web services, because it is going to have n number of protocols like HTTP, it can have an SMTP, it can have the another type of protocols also. Okay, so SOAP is a protocol, your REST is what? Is an architecture. Fine. Now SOAP is going to use the service interfaces to expose, or you can say to make use of the business logics, and REST is going to make use of URL to use the business logics. Now, what is the API? You have Java API for using the SOAP web services, that is JAX WS. And what is the API you have for the REST web service? That is JAX RS. That means whenever you're going to create an application, and if you want to implement EJB, okay, if you want to make use of EJB, and there you have a requirement that you want to design your client and using some other language, and now you want to build a communication between these two, the client with the different language and the server with the Java language. So what you can do is, you have a place in your application. Whenever you create an application, okay, so the whole project which you're going to create in NetBeans, there you have an option called as libraries. So in that you are having an option to add the external APIs, external libraries into the existing libraries, packages. So if you remember, I have told you also this, the Java is providing an option where you are not restricted to use the APIs which is defined for the Java, okay, and which is coming along with the platform called as NetBeans, or which is coming with the development kit which we are having in the form of JDK. It is giving you an option where you can develop your own API as a developer. Okay, you can use that API in your Java if you want to have certain kind of like things to be done between the client and the server. So you don't need to depend completely on the defined APIs which Java is carrying. You can have it your own API, you can develop. So this can be a project also, like you can have you can develop a Java API which can which you can inbuild in the existing development kit. So the SOAP and the REST is having its API, that is one is JAX WS and JAX RS. So why I'm giving you all those information, because whenever we are going to implement the the web services between the client and the EJB, so you can have this API easily downloadable from the internet, and you can add it easily into the existing libraries, okay, where your all the APIs are present. So that you can do. Now, the next is what your SOAP is going to define the standards which needs to be followed very much strictly. The rest which is going to have the standards, okay, so it is like, you can say not that much, it has to follow comparatively to the SOAP, but it is all the standards which is going to come like obviously from the SOAP, because it is following the SOAP. SOAP is not dependent on REST, but REST is dependent on SOAP, that we can say. SOAP is going to require more bandwidth. So if you're implementing SOAP web services between your client and the servers or EJB, then it is going to require more bandwidth comparatively your REST web service, and the rest is going to require less bandwidth comparatively your SOAP. SOAP is going to define its own security. That means its API, the Java API, which we are saying, okay, which is going to define a web service called as SOAP. So the SOAP is going to have its own security in its API, but REST is going to inherit or is going to carry the security measures from the other web services like SOAP. Then we have the SOAP who is going to have the XML data format only, but the rest is having the permission to use the different types of data formats like plain text, HTML, XML, JSON, etc. A SOAP is going to be less preferred than the rest because of so many things expecting, and the rest is going to be more preferred than your SOAP. Now, next one is what your enterprise bean architecture. Fine. So till now, what we have learned about the web services which we are going to use in between your client and the EJB. We started with the introduction of the enterprise Java Bean, where I've told you that why we are using the enterprise Java Bean, what are the advantages we have it, okay, and which all web services we have and which we can use it as per the requirement, based on the advantages and the disadvantages of it. Now, the next very important one, that is enterprise Bean architecture. So here the specification you are going to define for the architecture, which is also been considered as a server component model. Okay, so the architecture which you are going to have for your enterprise Java Bean, it is something also called as a server component model, which is going to specify that how you're going to create your server side applications, how you're going to create a scalable applications, how you're going to have the transactional, how you're going to have the multi-user support, how you can make the enterprise architecture or the application which you're going to develop using EJB more secure. So that all things are going to be defined inside your architecture. So why we create architecture, basically when we try to define, when we try to show that what our language or the enterprise bean is going to do. Fine. So if you talk about any field you can talk about, if you propose something like this is one thing which we can implement in our ongoing product or ongoing project. So what basically the very first thing is being expected is a prototype, or you can say an architecture, that how your the product is going to get integrated with the existing one, and how your product is going to work efficiently for us. So for that need you need to create an architecture. Fine. So you need to specify some specifications, you need to specify that how it is going to be created for the server side, how it is going to give all the advantages like scalability, multi-user support, security at the enterprise levels, at that kind of level where I'm saying that I want to have an enterprise application. So for that need, an enterprise architecture is going to have multiple things, needs to have multiple things. Okay, an EGB architecture should consist of certain things that we will see one by one. It must have the EJB clients, as we know. Okay, so it is completely an option. So if you don't want to have an EJB clients, that means the clients which is going to be developed using the EJB. So if you want to have some other languages to work on, so you can go with the web services what we have learned just now. Okay, now the architecture must consist of the clients, okay, through which we are going to have the communication. The client, the EJB client, is going to be an application who is responsible to utilize all the Java naming and directory interfaces, that is JNDI. Why we are using this JNDI, this Java naming and directory interfaces? In one of the chapter I explained to you, it is like an API which is present inside your Java, okay, and it is giving you an option to to have like a dictionary where you can find it out some meaning, or you can make your client application to use this kind of a directory to identify something from your EJB based application. If we want to find out something from the application as a client, we can make use of JNDI. Okay, it is going to have it is just going to have the look up for the references. It is going to have for the data which the client wants to access it by using the JNDI. Okay, it can make use of two things. It is going to have the home interfaces and the remote EJB interfaces. I'll let you know what exactly these two terms are. Just understand, we're going to have an architecture. First thing which is going to consist is EJB client. It is an application which has been developed, and its main purpose and the task is that it is going to utilize the JNDI, which is meant for what? For referring, or you can say referring the data which clients requires. Okay, the client is going to access the data from the application only with the help of an Java naming and directory interface. Okay, then it is going to have two things which it can use for referring the data when using JNDI. It can use home interfaces and it can use remote interfaces. Okay, why we are using this home interface and remote interface? So that we can utilize and access all the EJB functionalities. Okay, or you can say your client application will be able to utilize all the EJB functionalities which you are going to create for your EJB server. Fine. And to access all those functionalities, to see what all things has been written and what we can access it, we can make use of JNDI at the client end. Fine. Now what do you mean by home interface? It is going to allow us, okay, us means what? We are the clients which is going to use the home interface to have a remote client which is been able to create, find and remove even the EJB objects. So we can say that whatever objects we have of EJB, okay, this server will may be able to deal with it. Okay, as we all know that why we need an object. So if we have numbers of classes like the file input stream and output stream classes, we have number of buffers created, we have number of concepts called as serialization, where we have object input stream, object output stream. So we have number of objects which we can create and to deal with the EJB objects. Okay, so similarly we can also have an EJB objects to deal with that objects, where we are able to create, we can find that which objects is doing right now what, we try to access some information using the objects, and if you want to remove the objects completely, we can make use of home interfaces. Fine. When we talk about the sorry, the remote interface, okay, so there you have one term called as marshalling. Okay, marshalling and unmarshalling. So the meaning of this is that you are going to have the conversion of the data or the object, okay, into the byte stream. So that is something called as what? Marshalling. So when you're going to have a conversion of the data or the object into the byte stream, I hope you all know that what byte stream is now. So the stream where the data are being converted into the byte form, so that your JVM can be able to understand that what you have written. Okay, so the home interface was responsible to deal with the creation, removing, accessing of the EJB objects. Once it is been accessed, then your remote interface is going to do the marshalling and the unmarshalling. Okay, that means it is going to first of all provide the business logic or the methods, okay, which is been defined specifically for the EJB. And after accessing this business logic, or you can say the methods which is defined inside your EJB, it is going to convert that into the byte stream. That means marshalling and unmarshalling. So when it's convert to the byte stream, it is something called as marshalling. for the JVM when it is going to happen, and when it is going to give it back to the client, then it is something being done as unmarshalling. So when we say when it is going to deal with the request is something called as marshalling. When it is going to provide a response, it is something called as what? Unmarshalling. Fine. Now next is what? EJB implementations. Basically this is an actual EJB applications which you are going to be implemented by the developer, okay, which is going to provide in the application what all things we can expect, that it is going to have a business method or business logic invocation. That means we will be able to invoke all the business logics, we'll be able to create the business logics, we'll be able to remove the business logics, we'll try to find something using the JNDI. We can have the activation and passivation, that means your data which is stored in the database, okay, so there the data can have the changes, that is you can say the activation, or the data which is present in the database we are just accessing, not making any changes, that is something called as passivation. We have a database storage. As I told you, we can store the data into the database using the EJB application. We should have the database loading logic. That means we can have number of queries written for the database also. So when a developer develops a complete EJB application, we can expect so many things from the application. Okay, so I hope you have understood. We have an enterprise architecture. I'll just go back to the previous slide, and there I told you that EJB client is the important one. Whenever we are trying to develop an architecture, we need to take care about so many things. We'll expect that our architecture, what we are defining, should be able to work for the server side, should be scalable, should be multi-user support, should be the secure one, and it should consist number of things. It should have an EJB client which is going to utilize JNDI, which is going to have the references, which is going to access the data, okay, using the home interfaces and the remote interfaces. Remote interface is going to allow the client to create, find and remove the objects what we are going to create. And then we have the EJB remote interface, which is responsible to provide the business logic, which is also going to have the conversion of the data, which maybe your objects are holding it. So we'll have a marshalling and unmarshalling. Okay. So when we are going to deal with the client's request, it's something called as conversion the data into byte stream so that the JVM can understand. It's known as marshalling. And when we have the unmarshalling, that means the response when we are going to send back to the client, it is something called as unmarshalling. Okay. Then we have the EJB implementations. They are the actual EJB application components which we are which we are expecting that is being developed by the developer, and once it is been implemented for the use, we expect number of things from the EJB applications that we have learned it just now. Okay. Then we have a container, EJB container, as I told in one of the lecture that the JSP container is there for dealing with the JSP program. Okay, what is the job role of JSP container? It will separate your the embedded Java code from the JSP page, and it will make available to the Java bean where the Java code is going to get executed. Then we have a servlet container who is responsible to have the execution of the servlet code. Then we'll have an EJB container where the EJB files are going to get executed. It cannot happen in the servlet container and the JSP container because it is different from those. Otherwise, it is there is not going to be any difference between the servlet and the EJB. Okay, the architecture and everything are different. Now, when we talk about the EJB container, so the container is going to manage the distributed communication. It is also going to manage that marshalling and unmarshalling of the data, which is going to be sent and received from the client. So if you'll see the basic structure of this, we'll have an EJB client, we'll have an EJB server, and we have an EJB container. Okay. So whenever the EJB client is going to give some request to the EJB server, so inside the server will have an EJB container which is responsible to accept that EJB client. Okay, so it depends that what EJB client wants to do it. So whether it wants to create or just want to find some data, wants to remove some data, accordingly it is going to pass into the home interfaces or remote interfaces. Okay. So when it passes to the home interfaces where the request is been taken, So from the home interface, it has been passed to the remote interfaces where the marshalling and the unmarshalling is going to happen. So that means if the request comes to the home interface from the EJB client, from here it has been passed to the EJB remote interface where the marshalling of the request is going to happen, and it has been passed to the EJB bean. Once the response has been generated from here, again it is going to come here in the remote interface. Unmarshalling is going to happen for the client and is sending back to the client. Okay, so I hope you have understood this EJB container. Now we'll have some advantages of pursuing an EJB. Okay, so if you want to have an EJB application, what all advantages we can pursue and we can have. So EJB gives the developers an architectural independence that's completely depending upon the developers that how to develop an application. It is going to have an feature that is write once, run anywhere for the server side components. It is going to establish roles for the application development, like you can have an home interface, a EJB client, EJB server, remote interfaces. It is going to take care about the transaction management with the database. Okay, so how the application is also going to deal with the database, that management is also been taken care. Okay, EJB is going to provide the distributed transaction support. That is one of the main advantage you can say you have in the EJB, that it is having the distributed transaction or the distributed feature. Okay, whichever application you are going to be created using your EJB is going to be distributed, will be accessible from anywhere by anyone. EJB is going to help to create a portable and scalable application. Okay, so that means portable means you can execute your program anywhere, and you can have the scalability. That means you have a feature, or you can have option to add some features in the future. You can extend your application. Then you have an integration with Corba is also again one of the you can say the web services like your SOAP and the rest. It is going to provide a vendor specific enhancements. Okay, so according to the vendors specifications, it is going to enhance itself. That options is also available. Then we have the another one, that is request and response model. So here, whatever we have learned from that diagram is been written over here. So we'll just go through once. So your client is going to have, the EJB client is obviously is going to have an object through which all the things is going to be done over the server. So the client object, EJB client object, is going to be created first whenever we are going to develop an EJB client, and that object is going to make a request. Okay, it is going to make a request over the EJB server to the EJB server. Okay, in the enterprise pane, that EJB container is going to comes into the picture, because once the request reaches to the server, it has to meet to the container. If you remember, we had an EJB client and then we had a whole EJB server, and inside which we had a container, and in the container we had an home interface, we had a remote interface, and then we had an EJB bean. Okay, so the container is going to come into the picture, is going to check whether the client is in the approved list or not. Okay, whether it is been associated with the EJB server or not. So if you remember in the servlets also, what we used to do it, we make sure that whenever we develop the client, we try to have the redirection and the mapping which has been taken care by the XML files, who is responsible to understand that whatever interaction we are trying to have between the client and the server is already built by the server. Okay, so that needs to be defined previously, then only your container will be able to allow the client to communicate with the container, EJB container. Once it is authorized, then container is going to create a new instance, or you can say the new identity for the request which has came from the client, so that the server will be able to understand that which request is needs to have what response. Okay, and that has been identified by the instance what the container is going to create for the clients. After that, the container is going to ensure that bin is going to get its own transaction, own new transaction, considering that the transaction has not been built between the client and the server or the container of the EJB. So the container is going to ensure that the connection is going to happen or the transaction is going to takes place. Container is also going to inform the EJB object that the bin is ready and you can start passing the request to the bin. So once the establishment of the communication and the transaction happens, the container is also going to hint to the EJB client or the object which has been created to identify the request of the client is been given hint that now the container, or you can say the EJB bin, is ready to respond you. Fine. So that is how your request and response model is going to work. Next is what your EJ enterprise bean server. Okay. So the enterprise Java Beans server is a component transaction server. As I told you, it is something where you can have an EJB components which has been developed for the server side, and it is also called it as server side component model. The architecture what we are going to follow to develop an EJB application is going to help us to develop and deploy the distributed enterprise level application. I hope you are understanding this statement. The enterprise bean server is something called it as a server side component model following some architectural style to get develop the applications, and it will allow us to develop and deploy such applications which is considered as a distributed and enterprise complex level applications, which can also be a working in a multi-tiered environment. Fine. EJB server is going to take care about so many things. So it is going to manage and coordinate for the allocation of the resources to the application. Resources means it can be the memory, it can be the object or the instance for the each request. It can also takes care about the security. It is going to take care about the threads, going to take care about the connection or the transaction which needs to be built between your client and the server. It is also going to take care about the having an access to the distributed transaction management service. That means if the application is being accessed distributedly by many of the clients, so that transaction management should be there by the application which we are going to deploy into the EJB server. Next is your EJB evolution. So your EJB evolution, you can say, or the past and the present, we are going to say. So the very first thing is that Java J2EE means the enterprise edition is being developed and introduced in your second version of your Java, where your servlet, JSP, EJB, all these things came into the picture. So we had an option where enterprise Java platform was being developed for in the second version of Java, where we had an option to develop an enterprise application. In version 1.3, we have introduced the robustness as a feature for the enterprise edition application. We have introduced the web services like your Corba and then your SOAP and REST. What we have learned, it was been introduced in Java 2EE, that is J2EE 1.4. Then we had an ease of development of the EJB applications in the version 5, okay, Enterprise Edition 5, where we had a number of concepts like the annotations. We had an EJB 3.0, that is actually the third version of EJB has been introduced in Java 5th version. Okay, so if you remember, we also had a JSP 2.0. So 2.0 means the second version of JSP. So similarly, EJB was there from the second version, but fully it was being started, implementing in the Java 5th version, that is of Enterprise Edition. And till that time, even the EJB has been upgraded, and the EJB 3.0 was one of the platform which we have used developing the EJB application. Then in Java EE6 we had an EJB Lite, and we had more flexible features we had in sixth version. Then we came across with the Java EE7, where we had a number of things like JSON, we had an HTML5, we had developed the web sockets like a server socket and sockets to deal with the cloud-based application where EJB can play a major role. Fine. So that was your EJB evolution. Now your enterprise bean containers Okay, I think we are running with a short of time. So I'll just stop sharing here. We'll start with this topic in the next lecture. Okay, if you have any doubts, students, you can just let me know.